Some people reading this were born into a conservative family, live in a conservative town, and think Jesus was a Republican.
If you took out caring for the poor and needy from the Bible, you'd have a very thin book. He called all people to care for the poor and needy.
We have to let go of what has bound us to one particular party or another if we're really going to understand our obligation. Welcome to session 3. This one's called The Question of Responsibility. You look around and you can easily say, well, all those people who are invisible neighbors, certainly that's the government's issue. Government has handled it for so long, and we know that there's plenty of money being raised and fought over to handle this kind of thing. But this session really takes us deeper, and particularly for Christians, saying what responsibility do we have in light of what Jesus told us we need to be doing with those around us. Never talk about religion and politics in polite company is an axiom so old nobody quite remembers who said it first. But we have to talk about both of those if we're going to get to the bottom of this deep, deep problem. Some of you who are involved in this invisible neighbor study may be what they call the builder generation. Some of you may be baby boomers, baby busters, which is Gen X, Gen Y. You know, they say today that there's a new generation every 5 years. That's how much our culture is changing. But regardless, you have some perspectives based on when you were born. Some of you are thinking the government should handle this. This is a government's responsibility. That was not always the way it was. This section will get you deeper into how all of that started. Talking about politics is sure to bring about a clash of ideology. Some people reading this were born into a conservative family, live in a conservative town, and think Jesus was a Republican. Others who have a different background are thinking, how can someone who claims to be a Christian not be reactive in what's going on? I like the way my friend Tony Campolo responds when people ask him, are you a Republican or a Democrat? He says, depending on what the issue is. I side with the Democrats on this, I side with the Republicans on this, and I don't side with either of them on a lot of things. We have to let go of what has bound us to one particular party or another if we're really going to understand our obligation. I spent quite a bit of time in Washington and even in the office of faith-based in neighborhood partnerships. I believe that many people in government really do want to make a difference. How we go about making the difference, however, is another story. We really do need to have politics and religion coming together. We need to have the government and faith-based people working together. But I believe it should be faith-based people who are taking the lead. A lot of people who are really interested in social justice at this point in time are asking the question, why is the church not involved the way it should be? And I look back at all of the things that have gone on in the last 100 years, and for me, I see one of the reasons is that we have manipulated ministry to the point that we have pushed people in the pews back far from the front lines. When somebody else tells you, don't worry, we can handle this, and they do it on a regular basis with a different perspective every time, you kind of get the tendency to sit back and let somebody else indeed handle it. What we're saying to you, invisible neighbors, is it's time for you to handle what's in your community.
If you took out caring for the poor and needy from the Bible, you'd have a very thin book. And God didn't call rescue missions to care for the poor and needy. He didn't call individuals working in rescue missions to care for the poor and needy. He called all people to care for the poor and needy. And this is an opportunity for people to understand their responsibility biblically, socially, personally their commitment to God to care for the needy in our communities.
Even though you may be involved with a rescue mission, keep in mind that it's the church that's the bride of Christ. When Jesus left his disciples and ascended into heaven, he didn't leave for them a mission or a camp or a college or some other parachurch. He left the church. My friend Mike Yankowski was a student at Westmont College. He wrote this book called Under the Overpass. Mike tells this story. He was walking with some of his friends down the sidewalk, and up ahead to his left was a man, homeless, looking for a handout. And as they got closer, Mike didn't mention the man, but knew he was coming close enough that he would have to have an interaction. When they got just up to the man, Mike turned to his friend on the right and cracked a joke or responded to something and kept his head that direction until they got past. He didn't have to look at the man on his left. Mike said that wore on him so much that night in the dorm, and really caused him to think about how he treats those who have less than he does, how he treats the poor. Take a look at your own church and see if you see your own church responding the same way or differently. Take a look at you and your friends. How would you have responded if you saw Mike and Sam sitting in that sandwich shop? We've talked about politics and religion, those two things that we're never supposed to mix, but we have. And we've determined that the question of responsibility has complex answers. Don't forget to go deeper. Have some great, interesting discussion about your point of view, your values, your faith, your church, and what you see your role to be in reaching out to your invisible neighbors.